Good afternoon and welcome to ATN Society Watch. Ramadan dispute. NAS saga. Senate President's wife sues Senator Natasha for defamation. Will and testament. Justice Bello's daughter demands DNA test, issues 14-day ultimatum. And parental authority, UK court stops teen from returning over gang involvement. Remember that we are open for advert placement, news and events coverage, personality, society and political interviews, product service promotion and commercials. Remember to connect with us on all our ATN socials, on Facebook and YouTube, Atlantic Television Network, on Instagram and TikTok, Atlantic TV Network 1, on Twitter, we're on Atlantic TV Net. Watch us live on our website on www.atlanticnetwork.tv. We'll go on a quick break. When we come back, I'm going to introduce my guests and we'll dive into these reports. Please stay with us. Welcome back and thank you so much for staying with us. Here with me in the studio to dive into this critical discourse is Chuku C. Ikechukwu. He's a public affairs analyst, and we are glad to have you join us on the show.
Thank you. It's my pleasure to be here.
Let's go right into it. In Bauchi State, businessman arrested for wife's death in Ramadan dispute. Bauchi State Police Command has arrested a 50-year-old businessman for alleged culpable homicide after a domestic dispute with his 24-year-old second wife. The dispute occurred in the Fadama Mada area of Bauchi during the disagreement over food items for breaking the Ramadan fast. Police spokesman Ahmed Wakil stated that the argument escalated with the husband allegedly striking his wife with a cane. She collapsed and lost consciousness in their home. She was rushed to Abubakar Tafawa Balewa University Teaching Hospital, where she was pronounced dead on arrival. The suspect is now in custody, and the cane allegedly used in the assault has been recovered as evidence. The deceased has been placed in the mortuary for an autopsy. Commissioner of Police Anwar Musa assured the public that the command is committed to justice and emphasized that domestic violence is a serious crime. He reiterated the command's dedication to ensuring the safety of all citizens and upholding perpetrators accountable. What are your thoughts on this report, given the reason for, all of this crisis?
For that family, unfortunately, 2025 Ramadan ended before it started, and ended in a very tragic way. The thing is, this should be a case of domestic abuse rather than the outfall of the Ramadan fast. Of course, one may argue if there was no Ramadan, there probably would have been that altercation, but that may not be completely true, because the issue was an issue of preparing food. So Ramadan or no Ramadan, there would have probably been preparation of food.
Right.
Unfortunately, the news didn't give us what was the real argument. Was it a case of disagreement that, oh, we are not fasting and fasting and all that? But the major issue here is domestic violence. And like we have said over and over again, there is a law against domestic violence. Unfortunately, it's only when the outcome of when the result of the domestic violence is a fatality or leads to a fatality, that's when we see state agencies acting. It shouldn't be so. Every case of domestic violence should be taken as what it is, because the law, the VAP law, violence against person, did not prescribe for punishment or action only when there is a fatality. It's as soon as there is a domestic violence. And I'm saying that because I'm sure this may not be the first time this would have happened to this family. If you delve into their history, you may find out that this may have been a recurrent situation here in the family. And then the place where the incident happened, in the marketplace, for crying out loud, if there must even be a domestic violence in the marketplace, is the worst place it can happen. It takes away the dignity of that person involved. How people manage to do this thing after such public show of violence? Would they, if the woman didn't die, would they still have had opportunity of having a public show of affection? It's a contradictory extreme. So, but the bottom line is...
but where you're coming from with that, are you coming, for talking about if they would have been able to have like a love relationship? As regards, are you trying to talk about marriage dynamics?
Absolutely. After such a public display of animosity, using... For me, there is nothing could be more dehumanizing and undignifying for an adult than a public, not chastisement now, but open flogging. And I don't understand the rationale behind using a cane for an adult. If it's a child, maybe we can forgive that as part of the disciplinary measures. But for an adult, it begs the question.
It also begs the question, did this man carry this cane from his house to the market?
Apparently, yeah. Apparently, he has become... That's the reason I actually said that this may not be the first time. It suggests a situation where the cane has become a constant in his life, for him to have it in the market he probably have the cane everywhere he goes.
All right.
And maybe ready to flog.
Let's talk about choices in relationships, because part of the problems that aided this problem to get escalate as much as it did was choice of what to cook, because they both went to the market to get the things that they were going to use to break their Ramadan fast. And the problem started from, okay, let's buy this and let's not buy this and all of that sort of thing. Now, I want us to talk about, the agency of women as regards making choices in, both especially in marital relationships. It's come to the point that oftentimes you find out that when you talk to different people, the choice of what should be eaten is usually laid oftentimes on the mood of a man. Most people will have to call their husband to say, what do you want to eat, before they make food. Would you want to eat rice and stew, or would you want to eat gari and soup? So the man is usually, oftentimes, the one to pick what is served. Now, when they get to this marketplace, do you agree? Do you agree that is?
Did you notice how I'm looking at
because
it sounds like we live in a different world. For me, it's something of an aberration. Yes, I mean, I've heard it here and there that, oh, a woman calls the husband to ask where he is, but for all I remember,
not where he is, what we are eating.
What we are eating, yeah. For all I remember, even as a growing up child, wherever such issues came up, I remember vividly, my parents, not just my mom, has always condemned it, that it's in the place of a woman to decide what is best for her family, what should be on the table for the family. So when you say it's the norm for the man, I don't think so. I think when you come to the family, right, the woman is the HOD
as expected, but societal expectations and cultural diversity oftentimes doesn't really give that much room in certain climes.
I think that's an aberration. The only hindrance to that should be economic, or in some cases maybe there is a health issue or something. Ordinarily, the woman decide what is best for the family to cook. This is what we are eating today. It's not something that should come up for discussion. If at all it should come up for discussion, I think it should even be with the kid, especially the younger one you're still trying to pet to eat. Ordinarily, for me, if you ask me, I will find it something of an aberration if I get a call from Mrs. Wife and the call says, what are we cooking today? Of all the things I should worry about, I should still worry about what to cook in the house. For crying out loud, I don't know how I will react to such a situation. However, if there is a case of, like I said, ill health, maybe the husband has been sick and there has been a loss of appetite, it won't be completely out of place to ask him, oh, what would you want to eat?
Right.
So as to, so we don't have a situation where something is made and you can't eat it because you have not been eating for some time. Another thing is this, depending on the dynamics of each family.
That is where, just hold your thought. I want you to look at it in relation to, cross-generational or intergenerational relationships. We see that the lady is about 24 and the husband is over 50. Now, do you think that plays a dynamic in a way that
tribe, especially for the male folks, if you are an Igbo person and you marry, for example, a Yoruba person, you don't expect to be eating the same kind of food your mom was cooking, especially if your mom was Igbo, you know, you expect all the Oha soup and all the native soup of Owerri and all that. Because ab initio, you knew that this person will not be able to provide this thing, except as you guys keep living along, or there's a concerted effort to learn this other pattern. So for me, by the time you're marrying somebody outside of your own culture, you with that decision comes another decision, a secondary decision to give up some of your own traditional taste as it were, especially when it comes to your food and all that. Now that doesn't mean that you are completely forsaking the meals you grew up with, but you may just find out that at times eating these things may not be as easy as it was with growing up in the house, or maybe I may have to be the one to teach Mrs. Wife, yes, how to prepare this thing, or maybe even do it yourself. I had a guy who was telling me some time ago that when it comes to making Oha soup, the wife knows that he makes it better than her. So when they have to make that soup, he is the one that naturally goes in to do it. No discussion about that and other. So I think it all depends on family dynamics. It doesn't have to, these things doesn't have to be cast in stone. They don't have to be hard rules, but maybe conventionally the woman decide what to cook. Like I said, bearing economic situation, maybe today I want to cook a full cow, but the money available to us can only take a goat. Right. So in that case, the economy naturally decides what you make. The family economic at that point in time decide what you cook. But every other thing being equal, I don't think the man should be there. In the case like this case now where they went to market, didn't they have a list determined in the house, a pre-made list before going to the market?
If they had a list, do you think he will go with a cane?
The cane is no substitute for the list. I really don't understand what the cane was doing in that situation. Maybe the cane was bought in the market, but for me, it's something of an aberration. When you are not, even if you're a cattle header, at least at that point in time, you're not going with the cattle, you're going to market with another human being. What was the king doing there?
Thank you so much. I want to gather your thoughts as regards conflict resolution. Now, you rightly said that little acts of conversation oftentimes would have fixed problems of this nature. Absolutely. Now, while we look at, how conversations would have been able to fix this, there is now a high-rise report, even, as reported by the President of the National Assembly as regards high rise of domestic violence in the North. Why do you think that has become on the rise? Do you think we have lost, better ways to have conversations instead of picking up the cane or setting a feast as a means of settling, disputes?
In some cases, especially with regard to domestic affairs, it may not be proper, at least in some cultures, to say that we have lost it. It's rather right to say we never had it, but maybe we can start inculcating it. You see, conflict resolution cannot always be achieved by the feast. Right. Yeah. For me, the best way, and I'm saying this as a student of conflict resolution, I'm a student of studies on conflict resolution. But you see, if conflict must be resolved, you can't take away the talking part of conflict resolution, because as far as you have more than one person, there would always be conflict. So conflict is not the problem. Having conflict is not the problem. Right. But how the conflict is managed is what the problem is. I want this table here. You don't want it because you want to stretch out your leg. So how do we manage that situation? If I go that, no, this table cannot be here, and fling it either towards you, or then we have a situation in our hand. But that matter would have been resolved by having discussion. Maybe by the time we even talk, you may have a good reason why it should be here, which I may not have seen from my own purview. Yes, and that doesn't necessarily mean that when you adopt discussion, it's not to create a win-lose situation. Rather, it should be a win-win situation. But definitely, the place of conflict resolution, both in society and in families, and even at the international level, cannot be overemphasized. I think it's even germane now, given how the world is evolving.
Thank you so much for your insight on the report. Vice President of the Senate, the wife of the Vice President of the Senate, Mrs. Unoma Godswill Okpabio, has filed multiple lawsuits at the High Court of the Federal Capital Territory, Abuja, against Senator Natasha Akpoti-Uduaghan. The legal action stemmed from allegations of fundamental rights violation and defamation following statements made by Senator Akpoti-Uduaghan during a televised interview. In the fundamental rights suit number CV 181425, Mrs. Akpabio claimed that Senator Akpoti-Uduaghan's statement on the Senate floor on February 20, 2025, and subsequent remarks on a televised station violated her constitutional rights. The lawsuits filed under Section 34 of the 1999 Constitution and Article 4 and 5 of the African Charter on Human and People's Rights seeks legal remedies. Mrs. Akpabio requests a declaration that the statement by Senator Akpoti-Uduaghan constitutes a violation of her fundamental rights, an order of perpetual injunction restraining the senator from making further statements deemed insightful, scandalous, or abusive, which allegedly caused emotional and psychological harm to Mrs. Akpabio and her children, an award of 250 billion naira in exemplary, punitive, and general damages for the alleged infringement of her fundamental rights. While in a separate defamation suit, Mrs. Akpabio urges that Senator Akpoti-Uduaghan's claims on national television regarding alleged sexual advances by Senate President Godswill Akpabio have damaged her family's reputation. The defamation suit further seeks a declaration that the senator's statements were defamatory and have brought disrepute to Mrs. Akpabio and her family. An order mandating Senator Akpoti-Uduaghan to issue a written retraction and an unconditional apology published in two national daily newspapers, The Guardian and This Day. An award of 1 billion naira in punitive and exemplary damages. Now, an order of perpetual injunction restraining Senator Akpoti from making further statements. Now, meanwhile, High Chief Emmanuel Uduaghan, husband of Senator Akpoti-Uduaghan, has publicly supported his wife's claims. In a statement issued on Saturday, Chief Emmanuel confirmed that Senate President Godswill Akpabio made persistent sexual advances towards his wife, despite personal appeals for him to desist. Chief Emmanuel disclosed that his wife had confided in him about the alleged harassment and expressed shock that the advances continued despite his intervention. He recounted meeting with Akpabio to address the issue, hoping for an amicable resolution. However, he claims the harassment persisted. I approached the matter with the utmost maturity and responsibility, urging the Senate President to extend the courtesy and respect my wife deserves while honoring our friendship, Chief Emmanuel stated. Despite disagreements, my wife continued to express concerns about the harassment she has endured. The allegations have sparked political turmoil, with former Senate President Bukola Saraki urging Godswill Akpabio to submit an open investigation to ensure fairness and transparency. As the legal battle intensified, Senator Natasha Akpoti-Uduaghan maintains that the Senate President should publicly address the allegations and defend himself against these accusations. Well, this has been a developing story for about a week now. What are your thoughts on this report?
I think it's an attempt to bully Natasha through legal means. Now, this is not to say that she's completely right, but somebody has been accused, and the dangerous thing is that this thing is becoming more of a war between families than what it should be, a case of sexual harassment between the accused and the accuser.
All right.
Somebody has been accused. It's left for the man who has been accused to defend himself. I would have been more comfortable if he's the one that initiated this legal action against the senator than his wife. I mean, I don't understand how she has... Okay, yes, she may have suffered damage, but not fundamental human rights. For crying out loud, the lady who has alleged that she was sexually harassed should be heard. It's only when it is proven that she has no case or she has no evidence to justify her case, then that's when I would have expected Mrs. Akpabio to come in now to claim the damage she's seeking now. Then she can boldly say that her family has suffered undue harassment and the family name has been defamed. But now, what if it turns out to be true? What if the accusation turns out to be true? It's just a what if. What if it turns out to be true? would she, I mean, yes, I mean, she would be, she would have herself ridiculed. So I would have thought that she would have allowed her husband and this lady go through the process of clearing this mess. After they've cleared the mess, and then it is confirmed that her husband is innocent, then she can now come up with
but
a
her filing
lawsuit.
this lawsuit, you know, first of all, when you look at it, like it's usually said, two have become one, right?
Yeah.
And she feels that by her demands from the lawsuit, she wants Senator Natasha to retrieve her statement.
Yes, but she wasn't there when the accusation, when the act that led to the accusation was made. Or was she in the picture? She wasn't there. So, like I said, the husband may be innocent, but until that is proven, what I want to say, maybe common sense, a sense of decency should have expected her to calm down. I know it could be a trying time for her family, but to rush into it may not be the right way to go about it. And you see, not taking this action does not in any way take away the fact that she still supports her husband or loves her husband, but she would have done it. I mean, she would have just allowed the process go through after the Senate investigation, or after some time, if the lady cannot substantiate her claim, then she can now take her legal action for the damage and embarrassment caused her family, not necessarily a fundamental human rights issue.
Now, let's look at the fact that women are underrepresented in, the Senate and other big bodies. Now, when you look at that, and there is another report going around about a previous televised version, I think a year or so, of an NDDC chairman talking about how she was equally, sexually harassed. And when you look at the status of the Senate president and all of these reports, and women being involved, even though they are very much underrepresented, what are your thoughts on that regard?
Well, maybe sexual harassment may not be a byproduct of underrepresentation. It's just the nature of man-woman relationship, an unfortunate one.
Right.
Though, yeah. However, we also have some fantastic men who cannot be accused of sexual harassment except maliciously. Then underrepresented. Funny thing, when you talk about underrepresentation, sexual harassment, and all that, I'm a little bit amazed at the position the women folk have taken in this particular situation. I was listening to a Senator Olushola Obada or something, representing Osun somewhere, more or less like chiding Senator Nakota for not coming to her first before making the issue public. You see, this patriarchal thing we accuse the men folk of, it is not something that is related to the men alone, even though patriarchy is a male word. But in the matrilineal side, the thing here is power play. So everybody wants to feel like, oh, you should have told me first. And you see people, already there was a protest in Akwa Ibom State, even though I doubt that's a genuine protest against Senator Natasha. Of course, I said my doubt is based on the fact of what, if you have lived in Nigeria for some time, we have had incidents of paid protesters and all that. Otherwise, I don't see how people just stand up to protest against a Natasha for accusing Akpabio when the matter has not been fully
why I asked you about the underrepresentation is because if you remember where this matter started from in the beginning, it was because Natasha's seat, according to her, was moved to the far end where she would not be seen by the cameras.
Yeah, you see, moving her seats.
Yes, without prior information.
Underrepresentation, even if we had 500 more females in that house, that may have happened. But maybe given the way it has turned up, that may be a result of a frosty relationship between she and the Senate president.
Exactly,
has nothing to do with the number of women in the Senate.
But now this is not the first of its kind with reports we've gotten on the Senate president. Right, there was the one of telling somebody that this is not a nightclub. We've had the other one with Senator Kingibe, that happened
Yeah,
last year. Now,
taking
now,
the bill.
when you look at all of this and given the figure of what the Senate is supposed to stand for, what comes to mind as regards, because women are actually underrepresented. Actually, everybody is vying for a 7%. We're currently at 3%.
Absolutely.
You know, when you look at that, what are your thoughts in that regard?
Yeah, but you see, like I said earlier, you see, sexual harassment is not a byproduct of underrepresentation. It's just a byproduct of the randy nature of some men, if I may say that. So even if it is not in the Senate, even if it is in workplace, even if you have 500 senators and 1 female senators and 1 male senators, that 1 male senators can also decide to pick on any woman, and in their relationship what we have as sexual harassment comes out. So it has nothing to do with the number of representatives or the women representative you have. Rather, it's rather point to a character flaw.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a character flaw. Now, the thing with, like, the examples you have given, unfortunately, none of those matters we are followed to a logical conclusion. But also, it raises questions. If a particular person has been accused over time, over a particular thing, it may not be right to conclusively say, oh, he's guilty of all, since none of them has been followed to a logical conclusion. But if I were in his shoes, it calls for carefulness. If previously I've been accused of stealing while entering this particular building, next time I would have to think twice before getting into that building. I would want to have a witness of what is transpiring between me. I have to be careful. If I've had an accusation of sexual harassment before, I want to be careful when dealing with people of the opposite sex, whether those previous allegations were proved or not. It just sent something down my spine. Hey, guy, when you're dealing with these people, you need to be careful. So I won't lose guard with people. Then to the excuses that, oh, you know, he jokes, he's a man that jokes. No, there are some certain things that shouldn't come in when you're joking with people, whether male or female. Even if you are a male person, there are certain things I shouldn't say to you in the name of joke, and that's where emotional intelligence comes in.
Now, I really appreciate the fact that you came in through with the emotional intelligence. Let's quickly, you know, before we round up this story, I want us to talk about Natasha's husband supporting the wife and also saying, we are friends, and I've addressed him and told him to stay away from my wife, even in private. What are your thoughts on that?
What do you expect? A man whose wife has been accused, if the woman definitely has made such reports to him before, definitely you don't expect him to have said anything different to what he has said. But like I said earlier, it's for these matters to go on. However, I still insist on the part of the Senate President and those who, he has to watch himself now. And also, our institutions have to be careful. You see, it's surprising. It's surprising. Like I said, it wasn't a conclusion that he was guilty in the previous situations. But you see, if you have institutions who care about their integrity, the institution would have been careful who they choose as their leadership, no matter how fantastic the person of the Senate President is. If he had come with baggage of accusation of sexual accusation and you know, stuff like this, and considering how the world takes such situation, the Senate, I think, would have been careful on who they choose and all those stuff. However, I am not trying to blame the Senate for choosing, but I'm only saying that our institutions need to be careful who we throw up as representative. What baggage do they come with? We cannot always have people with seemingly
questionable
character flaw leading us every time. It tells on the institution.
Very well. Now, real quick, let's go into our next report. And Bello, doctor of the late Justice Moses Abubakar Bello, former president of the Abuja Customary Court of Appeal, has demanded DNA tests for her siblings, issuing a 14-day ultimatum to the executors of her father's will. She threatens criminal charges for breach of trust if they fail to comply. The demand follows a recent FCT High Court ruling by Justice Mohammed Zubairu, which invalidated a codicil to Justice Bello's will, affirming the original will as the sole legal document. Anne had challenged the executors, Reverend Father Ezekiel Owolumit and Christ the King Catholic Church Okene Parish, alleging improper distribution of her father's estate. Aunt's legal counsel, Victor Giwa, stated that the court's ruling necessitates DNA testing as a precondition for inheritance, citing paragraph 5A of the late Justice Bello's will. She specifically demands DNA tests for Joseph Asuku Bello and 6 others, warning that non-compliance will result in forfeiture of their inheritance. The 14-day notice addressed to Reverend Father Ezekiel Owolumate accused him and members of her stepmother's family of conspiring to disinherit her. It warns against any sale or transfer of assets under the will and threatens criminal charges for non-compliance. Anne had previously contested the executor's distribution of her father's properties, urging that she was entitled to 11.11% of his shares and stocks as stipulated in the original will rather than the 4.16% she received. She also challenged the validity of the codicil, which Justice Zubairu ultimately declared invalid due to lack of legal requirements, including witnesses' signatures. We currently have the case of the Access Bank, Herbert Bigwe and his family, and will and testament dragging. What are your thoughts on this report?
Unfortunately, in these cases, I would have naturally thought that where questions will come up is where a man died without a will or intestate, as it's called. But in this case, in these 3 cases, there is a will deposited. Now, if you ask me as a person, what is my take on contesting wills? I would rather think that it is rather unfair to contest a will a man freely made while he's alive,
even though you're feeling cheated on it.
Except I have a feeling that the will was not freely made. Maybe the man was under some influences or there's a distortion in making the will. Let me give an example of what I think of influences. Maybe the man was maybe under some drugs, maybe the man was manipulated or something. Ordinarily, if you freely make your will, even if I'm anticipating that you would have willed so to me, but you made that will and you didn't will it to me, I'll take it as it is. Now, in this case now, it does appear that the man has some sort of will, and then what was presented to the court as a condition. A condition is a document attached to a will. The judge, in his wisdom, felt that that was a private letter written to maybe the church where the man domiciled the will and maybe appointed as the executors of his will. So the judge threw out that document as not a condition. Having done that, the lady is asking that the will. I think another issue they have here is it's a case of a polygamous home, because she seems to be on the one side and her siblings or assumed siblings from her father's wife on the other side. Now, in her thinking from the foreground, she is thinking that a DNA test should be done to confirm that everyone that parades as the man's father is truly the man's father. Maybe the will has been crafted in such a way that says, oh, the property should be shared amongst my children. Or otherwise, there won't be this case. I mean, if the will has outrightly said this property belongs to Anne, this belongs to Femi, this belongs to Kemi, I don't think there would have been an issue. It would have been that, oh, your name is in the will and your name is not in the will. But she is alleging that she should have gotten much more than was given to her. So
but if the man never said any of those people mentioned, or he never said these people are not my children, do you think it's in our rights to demand for them to have a DNA tester?
Looking at I was trying to take a study before now on how wills work in Nigeria, especially in some part of Nigeria, especially in a state like Lagos State. What the law, using Lagos as an example, said is this: if a man dies,
abandonment and mistreatment. Now, despite the teenager's claim of being physically and emotionally abandoned, Mr. Justice Hayden ruled that the risk of harm in the UK outweighed concerns about his stay in Ghana. The teenager contacted the British consulate and a child welfare organization after his parents left him abroad, alleging they misled him and that he faced inadequate care and mistreatment. His parents argued that he was vulnerable to gang grooming, with evidence presented of poor school attendance, aggressive behavior, and suspicions of criminal activity. The judge acknowledged the boy's right to be heard, but ruled that the decision fell within the generous ambit of parental decision taking, citing the risks he faced in London. Legal experts highlighted the case as a complex balance between parental authority and child welfare, with concerns about youth vulnerability to criminal exploitation in urban areas. Now, when I stumbled on this report, it was a very awesome read for me, given that, you know, over here in this part, your parents get to choose pick the I mean, in the past, parents get to pick the schools you attend. Parents get to say, okay, you can go to this university or you cannot go to this university. And now we have a child that is, you know, filing cases against his parents for abandonment. What are your thoughts on this report?
Well, like the judge said, there should be a balance between child welfare and parental authority.
Right.
You know, this story reminds me of back in the days, like it reminded me of what you just said. While we were growing up in Lagos, there were issues we had. You know, you had a particular child. You know, we have not been seeing this child again, so the parents have taken him or her back to the village. So as a measure of discipline, maybe the child was thought to have become wayward or becoming wayward. So to teach that child some lessons, they send the child back to the back to the village, so as to deprive that child. It does some things. It deprives that child of the companies that you are leading him to waywardness. It deprives the child some comfort that he has in city, as it were,
right.
Lagos, as it were. Then, you know, maybe while he or she is away in the village with all the maybe farm work and all the strenuous work, you know, water, electricity, and all those issues that comes, he may have a sober reflection and rethink and have to come back to his or her senses. But at times it also fails. At least I know one or two instances where a child was taken back to the village for, if I remember that of a female child. Before you know it, they said, oh, the child got pregnant in the village. The thing is, who are you leaving the child with? And it's the same thing in this case now. Who are you leaving the child with? Do you think those people you're leaving the child with will do a better job?
This boy was actually put in a boarding house in Ghana, right? And that is because he's had a history. Yeah. A history of gang, you know, being a part of a gang grooming.
Yeah. It suggests that his life was tilting towards becoming a gang member.
Tilting towards being a gang member. And, you know, before parents would take such drastic decisions, it's expected that they would have done their groundwork as regards what is best for the child. Now, do you think this option of sending the child to Ghana to stay in a boarding school, now away from certain opportunities, especially as regards regards his emotional well-being, right, like you rightly said, do you think that is, you know, tilting in the right direction, given that we are trying to raise mentally stable adults and emotionally balanced adults? Do you think this is a move in the right direction as regards, you know, the mental health of the child?
I want to tilt in the same thinking with the judge here, who said, who made a comparison between child welfare and parental authority. Child welfare cannot be overemphasized. The importance of child welfare cannot be overemphasized. But of what use is the present welfare of a child who is not going to live tomorrow? I mean, if denying that child some welfare, as it were today, would make him turn out a better person tomorrow, I think I would go for denying that child those welfare today. Like those welfare, you know, you have better life, as supposedly you have better life in the UK than in Ghana. But look at the trajectory where the guy's life is going. He's, you know, the school attendance is low from the parents. He's tilting towards gang life. There's evidence to suggest that he's likely going to turn out to be a gang person. With that poses a risk to his life and his career life, you know. But then the question again is, bringing him to Ghana or to any country at that, does it holistically solve that problem? Who are the people? What did they do to find out the kind of environment he's going to be in? Is it just dumping him in the school? Is there specific effort, or are there specific effort to ensure that you have disciplinarians in the school who will specifically monitor that guy, and to ensure that, because, you know, you may have taken him away from one set of gang in the UK, probably to save the family's name. But in Ghana or any other place that you are taking, are there no gangs there? What is the possibility that he won't be attracted to gangs? What are you putting in place to ensure that he doesn't get attracted to the gangs? And then what is the plan when there is a noticeable improvement in his life? What is the plan to bring him back where he can enjoy the whole family comfort? And while he's away in Ghana or any other place, what effort would be made by the parents to assure him that we mean well for you? Because it's one thing for you to mean well for a person, it's another thing for you to demonstrate it. Yeah, we can say, oh, in the future the guy may look back and see that, oh, they really meant well for me. But now, how would they constantly, is there any plan to constantly keep in touch with him, to give him an assurance that, oh, maybe in so semester or term, if we notice an improvement in your academic performance, in your attitude, your behavior, you probably would come back here. And then when you come back here, we're also going to be under monitor or surveillance or something to ensure that you don't fall back to this. Yeah, so it shouldn't be all punishment without an eye for the future.
Thank you so much. One last question before we wrap up this episode of our show. I want to get your thoughts as regards. Now, when people take your children abroad, you know that the policy there does not allow for certain things that would ordinarily fly in Nigeria. Like one of the reports I stumbled upon yesterday was a report of a man actually beating up a 3-year-old child. Those actions are not allowed in more civilized crimes, even though the man has now been arrested by the police in Nigeria, which is way to go for us, which is really, really good news in that regard. The upbringing that children get abroad. Now, many parents, in the season of Japa, a lot of people have gone abroad with their children, but you find out that abroad, children are more outspoken as regards saying, okay, you are not supposed to be spanking me, you're not supposed to be hitting me. Anything you do, there's a tone of voice you use that is termed abusive, right? And in that, do you think now that drags a stretch where parents start thinking about their own upbringing in Nigeria, right, where you can be corrected with oftentimes with a tight fist, and you know it acts as a memorial sometimes for you and creates a better trajectory for you to grow up with, right, as opposed to growing up in you know, the UK, where you can only talk, right, and maybe give the punishment of, you know, look behind the wall and all of that, especially when you're dealing with a minor. Now, do you think that child was sent back here to enact the strong fistedness African parenting and African people are known for, as opposed to, you know, the pampering that we see that usually happens abroad?
Yes, I think that may be one of the reasons that have informed this decision. And I was also surprised that the judge agreed with the parents. From what we have seen ahead of this claims, I was looking at a situation where the judge would have said, oh, no, because the judge also affirmed that UK is the boys' home.
Right.
But for the purpose of proper upbringing or something, parental authority, he can stay in Ghana until his character improves. So it does suggest that in spite of the cultural differences in the way we bring up our children and what happens there, the judge probably or most certainly have realized that there is need for parental authority to direct a child in the way he should go. Now, to the question of the comparison between here and there, I think what works for them may not work for us. And as a parent, if you're going to leave, one of the things you should consider is how that new environment will impact on your children. Yeah, if you're somebody who has strong African cultural values, especially Nigerian values. If, for example, if you're from Western Nigeria, you expect your children to dobale while saying good morning, to you see hold it very you consider how to. These are things that each individual parents and family have to consider and make a decision. Nobody will do it for you because it may be okay for me, it may not be okay for you. I may think that what is culture. We can pack this aside and keep it. But to the other guy, he's very much, holding on to it. And you cannot completely say he is right or wrong, especially when such a culture does not directly harm the child, either physically, emotionally, or psychological harm. If it is just, this is a way of life, then I think each parent going abroad should make a concrete and critical analysis of how this journey I'm embarking on would affect my family in terms of their moral, their their culture, their look at culture. Back then in school, I remember one of our lecturers said something talking about one of his friends. The friend said he was bringing back his family to Nigeria. What was the situation? One of his child hugged him and said, "Oh, Daddy, I love you so much. When I grow up and you are old, I'll take you to an old people's home." And the man was shocked. This is not Africa. We don't take our parents to old people's home. We keep them in the house and nurture them. So if you're such a person that such situation will ring off an alarm bell in your head,
you might have to have a rethink.
Absolutely. Well, if you think that, oh, we can pack that aside, old people's home, I don't mind, then you can.
Thank you so much for your insight on that report. Well, this is where we wrap it up on this episode of Atlantic Society Watch. Thank you so much, Saike Chike, for giving good insight on the show. Remember, we're open for advert placement, news and event coverage, personality, society and political interviews, product service promotion, and commercials. Remember to connect with us on all our social media profiles on Facebook and YouTube, Atlantic Television Network, on Instagram and TikTok, Atlantic TV Network 1. We are on Twitter on Atlantic TV Net. Watch us live on our website on www.atlanticnetwork.tv. Remember that peace and unity are the pathways to progress. Thank you so much for watching. I am Otaria Benjamin. Please stay with us.